Hey Debbie, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good, thank you, Tricia. Nice to meet up with you again.
I know it's been a while since we've talked, right?
Yes, it has been a while, and I can't believe it's been like a year. Since we finished the
Oh.
training and got all our certificates and moved on all our own individual
Mm,
ways.
yeah, everybody's moved on in such interesting and different ways.
Yeah, it's nice to catch up with people and see their journey, where they've traveled to, what they've done with it, so how it's impacted,
Yeah.
people.
So I know you said you're seeing a lot of in-person clients. What
Mhm.
what types of stuff are you working on? Or do you have a niche?
Well, it's really funny because, I thought, okay, my niche was obviously thinking depression, because, it's a huge background, suicide prevention.
Yeah.
But it's funny when they said your niche sort of tends to find you. And my clients have been really varied. So anything from autoimmune to relationship, but 95% of them, maybe even a little bit more, have had a huge amount of trauma.
Yeah.
So that seems to be the underlying what comes through with every client,
Yeah.
which
Well,
is
and I think that
fascinating.
word trauma is fairly loaded because when people hear the word trauma, they think it's something like huge that's happened, like you were raped or you
Yeah,
witnessed murder or something. But sometimes it's really small things.
yeah. Or sometimes it's not even been something that they've recognized as, like I
Right.
had one client that was saying, oh, no, 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 I had a pretty normal sort of family. My dad was a grumpy old bugger, that sort of thing. And then when we went into it, it was like, oh, okay, so that's not normal, what she was telling me. That's what somebody doesn't, that was traumatic for you, the way you lived then. And then she saw it differently, how it impacted her.
Mhm. Well, I think, as kids, everyone thinks that their family is just normal, average, run of the
Yeah,
mill,
that's
no
the way
different
it
than
is.
anybody else, And so, of course, you have no way of knowing that the things you experience may or may not be normal, quote unquote, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah,
like my own childhood, I always felt like we were just the most average, American family, except as an adult, I began to recognize the level of crazy, quite
yeah,
frankly, you know.
yeah.
Um, and, after many years of dealing with an emotionally unstable sibling, um, it came to light that she was actually diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder. And my personal opinion is there's some level of narcissism in there as well, but
Mm,
she's crazy. And that was what I grew up with. Did I ever
yeah.
recognize any of that as trauma? No, I just thought we were a normal family.
Well, yeah, and that's it. That's what most people, even,
Yeah.
years ago when I was doing phone counseling, and it was very much, when people would ring in, their version of normal is somebody else's version of abnormal,
Right.
so to them, that's the everyday, that's how they've always lived. They don't know any better or any different. It's
Right.
just that's that generational trauma too can be passed through.
Oh, for sure. And then that begins to impact people on an epigenetic kind of level where it becomes
Yeah.
almost ingrained and passed down through generations.
Yeah. And the fascinating thing with those sort of things is that not depression, but that repression, how so many women have had that, they repress those feelings, they push those feelings down, they don't, deal with it. And then, they come out with these autoimmune issues, and then
Yeah.
that just snowballs. And that's amazing to see the difference that can make,
Hmm. Yeah.
that
I mean,
letting
it's
go of it.
interesting because I've had a few clients that have come to me and they have, various autoimmune issues, whether it be hypothyroidism or celiac or IBS,
Mm,
whatever. And when you start asking them things about their childhood, it becomes um, you become aware that there was some kind of abusive, emotional, manipulative, background there. And
mm,
then you recognize that experience and how it carried through into their adult life. Maybe they had a bad marriage or something. And then when you start talking about their experiences within that relationship, the husband was probably on that narcissistic spectrum or something. There was abuse there. And she's never even recognized the thing she went through was abusive. because it's just, whatever, it is what it is. And when you start to shed that light on that, people begin to go, oh, oh, and then they start seeing those patterns repeat in their life, and why everybody they seem to be in a relationship with is somehow toxic.
Yeah. And
It's
why
really
people keep picking the same sort of relationships over and over again. That they, without even being aware of it, they're trying to heal that subconscious wound of a family issue, that if I can make that person, love me,
yeah,
then solve the problem that I had in my family with one of the parents or something.
yeah.
And they keep picking the same sort of people, just they come
Daddy
in
wasn't
different
available, so
outfits and guises, but they're the same pattern.
right.
Yeah.
Like your father wasn't available to you emotionally, so you tend to pick partners that are emotionally unavailable. And
Yep.
it's just that mind seeking what is familiar, the rules of the mind, come up,
Yeah.
and you're picking out somebody that you see this person and they treat you in a way that feels familiar. And
Yeah.
it's not a conscious decision. You just go, oh yeah, this feels familiar. I understand this dynamic. Next thing you know, you're in a toxic relationship with somebody that's, dismissive or straight up abusive.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the thing the thing is that when you're in those sort of relationships, you constantly think, well, you tend to be like a rescuer person, and you attract people that have those wounds, that they need that. And then when you're in a relationship with them, you don't get what you want from them because they are unavailable to give it to you. So then that person thinks, I'll try harder and amp it up to try and get what I need from them. And then it doesn't. And then that frustration and that thing, it's just that constant round and round and round thing. And until you're made aware of it, or from your subconscious of, oh, that's why I'm picking that, or why I'm attracted to that, or, I don't need that anymore. Yeah, it's very powerful, very powerful. It's great to see somebody heal. I had a client that since he was 14 years of age landed up in, mental support places, and basically shut his whole life out. And he's in his 40s now. He's just, and now he's sort of let a lot of all this stuff go. He's addressed it, and he's thriving. He's still working on a few things, but he's doing stuff that he hasn't done for over 20 years.
Isn't that amazing?
And to see that, and this guy had an IQ of in the genius level. So it's not about smarts, it's those emotional, entanglement that keeps it trapped there.
Yeah, it's true. I find that the longer I do this, just from that initial intake conversation, I almost can tell you exactly what's wrong in this person's life. You're like, oh, I get it. They don't feel like they're enough, or they don't feel like the things they want or need are not available to them. And you can see it coming. The client doesn't see it. And of course you can't straight up go, oh, well, here's your problem. You've got to go through that session, because you never know really what's going to come up.
And what else might come out. Yeah.
Right.
And I love
what else?
The role, function, purpose, that is amazing, because as you know, with trauma, it's can be stored, it is stored in the body. So the somatic, I use a bit of somatic practices in there with the body, and that's just when you come to that, and you're looking at them and you're watching them and you're asking, and it just like bang bang bang, it comes, this how do you see it? What is it like? Where is it? What does it feel like?
Yeah.
It just gives you so much. And that people had no idea they were going to say anything like that.
Yeah.
Or where it came from.
I've had clients tell me something, and then, after the session, they go, I have never told a living soul that in my life. And I don't talk about that, but yet I felt compelled to tell you this.
Yeah.
And now I realize why I don't talk about it, or whatever. And they're almost apologizing that they told me things, I mean, I'm told a lot of really intimate things, as I'm sure you are as well.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people just choose to crush all of that stuff down and not deal with it. And I think that's why a lot of people avoid therapy in general, because they feel so uncomfortable talking about all of that dark stuff that they choose to ignore. They just swallow it and pretend it doesn't exist. But then the problem is it festers and then creates these other problems, right?
Creates something in the body, creates some other
Yeah.
wound that's going on. And then the body goes, well, you're not paying attention. I'm going to amp it up,
Right.
because, to your detriment, if you ignore, I'll just like really push harder and give you something to try and get your attention. I think it's like, when people come in, they go, oh, I'm nervous or I'm anxious, about, what it's going to be like, what's going to happen, because there's a lot of fear, especially when things have been held for so long, that if they do let that out, let go, am I going to be able to control that? Am I going to lose myself, because I can't put it back in fast enough.
Right. I've got to swallow it again. I mean, I've experienced with some people that it's not just about, they're afraid to let things come out. They're just in complete denial that something even happened or that it impacted them in any profound way. And they will, and that almost drives, and I see this quite often, especially in my area, which is narcissistic abuse. They really try and just keep all of that stuff squashed down so tight, and they have a hard time recognizing how it impacts them. And then all of this kind of trauma that they carry with them causes all these physical issues in the body and keeps them stuck. It keeps them small. It keeps them in this loop of constantly having abusive partners. But it also prioritizes them in a kind of messed up way. If I am forever a victim, then I will get my attention paid to me.
Some need met. There's some need met there.
Yes. So, and that's where you get out with RFPI, which is role, function, purpose, intention. And when you're able to get them to draw that out and figure out, well, why am I unable to do these things for myself? Why am I unable to provide financially for myself or my children? Why am I unable to find a decent place to live? Whatever the thing is, and they feel like they can't provide this for themselves. It becomes like being that victim is their entire identity, and they struggle with letting go of it. Because if they're no longer that victim, then in some way, subconsciously, they cease to exist, at least in their own mind. And their needs aren't important. And how dare I even expect to have someone meet my needs, because clearly I am a terrible person, as evidenced by all of these partners I've had in my life who abuse me. So
on some level, I must deserve it.
Right. So therefore I must deserve it. So I will keep punishing myself, and I will also prioritize myself, making myself needy so that people will pay attention to me. And if I can't, it's like this self-inflicted victimization. If I remain this victim, then somehow my needs are seen. Maybe they're not met, but
and it causes them such emotional pain. And it's like, I said to one, I said, well, it's like you keep giving them the knife to tear another strip of skin off of you. What is it that you believe is so that you need to have that done to you? Because you're not getting your needs met, and yet you keep going back and saying, here's the knife, take another piece of skin off of me, create another wound. But I think, that's what we do. We offer that space, that safe space, where they do feel confident and comfortable. And it's, if you get that right therapeutic match, which I strongly believe that, the right people will come to you, and if you're the right person for them, it just flows lovely.
Yeah, it does. It's absolutely true. When you click well with a client and the client clicks well with the therapist, then magic can happen. I feel strongly it's not me doing this work for you. It's me guiding you to do the work for yourself.
Yes.
and the clients aren't necessarily capable of doing this on their own, or they wouldn't have continued to have this problem for so long, but they do need a facilitator or a guide to help them find the way out.
Yeah, because if it was that easy, they would have done it themselves, just like we would have done it ourselves. And like I know in my life, for over 20 years, you're constantly searching and studying and doing different things.
Yeah.
But until you can address that emotional wound that's sitting in there, then no amount of logic, you can say, yes, I've dealt with that, I've processed that, I understand it and all that. But then when you come back to that, and it's interesting to see how somebody actually, you can hear the change in their voice, like when they go back to that, they sort of start to talk, differently, or their body changes in their demeanor, while they're going through that. And then it's that release, and it come out, and it's like, oh yeah, that I feel lighter straight away. I feel lighter. And that time thing, they go, oh, I felt like it was only 20 minutes or half an hour, and you might have been there for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it is amazing. And I think for me, that's the thing I think is, if I can help somebody not have to do the same journey I've done, where I've, like, since early 2000s when I first started with counseling and that, looking for what's effective, what's faster, what gets to that root cause reason, and change how you see yourself and what you believe about yourself, and not have to do that 10-year journey or that 20-year journey, because we've done that. We've all been through that. And now we want to say, okay, this is what I can give you, this is what I can help you with, so that you don't have to do that journey and be in that pain for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah. It's absolutely,
because it's a very a painful place, and a dark and lonely place, especially if you've got severe depression, post-traumatic stress. I'm linking in with a lot of first responders, and I'm seeing a lot of moral injury, because they're all the people that are in those industries, they're very much like us as well, helpers, that they want to do good for the thing, and they put so much into who they work for, how they're seen, their organization. And then they get injured, or something happens, or PTSD, and the moral injury from not being supported by their organization, that sense of being let down and feeling, you've got to go through the ringer to prove something.
Yeah.
So, a lot of stress, with them at the moment. So, well, not at the moment, just generally, but it's a big thing. And that's why I have a real connection with working that, probably because I'm in the medical field as well, with other things that I do.
Right. I think it's an amazing journey as a therapist too, just to walk with your clients hand in hand and see their experiences. And to me, it's just this profound sense of being thankful that I get to do this work with people and to witness their journeys.
It's a privilege, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And you see them at their lowest when they're in a lot of pain, and then you see them through time with whatever program you happen to work, and then you see them completely transformed after you've worked together. And it's just like, I just stand there in awe of this therapy that we have,
and the tools that we've got that we can use, to mix and to see them change and feel that lightness, or the ability to do. And sometimes even when they've come in for what they say they're coming in for, what's surprising is the other areas that it impacts. That
it often has nothing,
ripple.
consciously to do with what they came in for. Often what they say they come for has nothing to do with what's going on. It's just a symptom of their problem, and it's what the visible aspect that they see, that they feel the most frustration with. And then you realize it goes a lot deeper, and it's not just this isolated, little thing. It's, it encompasses a bigger area of their life, and it stems from something. Sometimes it's very surprising to the client.
Yeah. No, it is. It's very powerful. And, I think the thing as a therapist that we've learned too is to get out of the way, to get out of our own way of, thinking that you're going to go a certain way, because it can go, wherever. And
Mhm.
the client leads, you're
Yeah.
looking to see, like where they're steering, and then you go by that.
Yeah.
And we learn something every time. Every client teaches us something new about ourselves, about the whole therapy, about whatever it is, the presenting issue that they may have come through,
Yeah.
because everybody comes through, and although there's some things that are very similar, there's always their own personal stamp on it, for what they've experienced, how they form to those beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
I
meaning.
mean, I find, to me, one of the most interesting things is at the end of a session, especially that first session with somebody they've never experienced this before. And, once I bring them back to full awareness, I'll ask, how do you feel? And almost every single person says, I feel like a heavy weight's been lifted off of me, or I feel, sometimes they'll say they're a little tired, but they feel light. They feel, and it's always like some kind of sense of relief, you know?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's like that image, isn't it? Like where you're carrying that jacket full of the heavy rocks and not even aware, because you've carried it for so long, that
Right.
those rocks are in there. And then when you start to get rid of them, you go, oh wow, I didn't even need this jacket anymore. It's not doing me any, it's not serving me. And yet I've carried it, like, that plus the backpack plus the suitcase, and I'm still going through life adding more stuff.
Right.
But no, it's been interesting. It's a really profound way, and I love the way it's so quick and
It
effective.
really is. It is quick, it's effective. People, they're just transforming themselves so quickly. Of course, change comes in multiple ways. It's not always immediate, but there is pretty much always a sense of relief, that lightness that comes right after the session. And sometimes it's just, happens a little more slowly with people. Just depends on what the trauma is and how deep it goes.
Absolutely. And I always tell the client that, just, be kind to yourself for the next few days, because it's a bit like I explain, connecting the dialogue between the subconscious and the conscious, that, over the next few days, things may continue to process, at least, that things come up and something will pop into your mind. Oh yeah, that's why, or that's, and sometimes that can be a bit unsettling, and then it's like, okay, that's come up, and then it's cleared. And I've seen amazing things that they didn't even know that were there, like, huge anger that sits there, and not even realizing that it was there. And then you're dealing with that in a good way, where they've reached out and had a discussion with somebody, and the intensity of that it's gone.
Yeah. I think what's also kind of interesting, is when I don't know if you do this, but I often ask, when they're in the session, they have this feeling, belief, whatever it is. And, there's a part of the session where, you'll ask them to go inside and find that part of them that's causing this problem, this behavior. And it's part of that RFPI stuff too. But sometimes I'll ask them, well, where in the body do you feel this feeling of anger, hatred, whatever the thing is they feel? Where is it? And with my narcissistic abuse clients, it's almost always here,
The throat, the
stomach.
chest, or the stomach. Yeah.
And I find that so fascinating. And more often than not, if the woman has a thyroid issue, feels tightness in the throat. And isn't it fascinating that, she felt so unable to speak up for herself, to speak out, to tell anybody what was happening. And now she's feeling this sensation in her throat. that prevents her from speaking or swallowing or talking or, anything. I know I myself had that, and I'd been on thyroid medication for 28 years. And through this work, I no longer have thyroid problem.
Yeah.
And my own doctor had said to me, well, how is it you had a thyroid problem and now you don't? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't just go away.
The brain is a powerful thing. When you tell it to do what it wants to do, it'll do what it thinks you want. And sometimes that may be not to your best interest, but at the time when you created it, it thought it was doing you something purposeful,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had a lady with rheumatoid arthritis, and that was right back at the beginning. And it was, I saw her a week or so after, and she was going like, the pain in my hip's gone. Look. And she's, squatting and, like, look at this, I can do this. And,
isn't that awesome?
And it been there. And again, very much was like, she had pushed that down, that voice. She couldn't say anything because it was like, if you say something, you're going to cop it even worse, so you learn to shut up, not say anything, not create. And even in my own experience in a relationship was, one of the beliefs I had about it was I must be all things to all people. And I always felt that it was a competition and I couldn't win. So it was better to say nothing, because if you said something, it was going to just escalate out of control. But it's funny where those beliefs come from, that like, be all things to all people. But what about myself?
Right.
Well,
and I think that's
I would have been happy I would have been happy in my life and the image of myself, that hating yourself, that I would have been happy. And I thought it was like, oh, maybe this whole Victorian thing to, how they used to cover the mirrors with black, because I didn't want to see myself. So really for a lot of even though I was a very maternal mother and everything, but I was invisible in my own life. And I think a lot of people do that. They become, everything for everybody else. The people pleaser, the good person, the nurturer, the fixer, the solver. Like we learn in the roles, of what, is a major role. We're the sick one, we're the black sheep, we're the nurturer, we're the difficult one, all of those different roles that we look for, that you fit in there somewhere.
So
and they're always very powerful things.
Yeah. And then when you begin to examine, well, why am I the difficult one? Why am I the nurturer? Why am I, whatever it is? And begin to examine, where does that come from? And why do I feel that this is my role? And why aren't my needs more important?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think women in particular, we prioritize everyone else over ourselves, and our needs come last.
Yeah. And then we, you have all these other, coping mechanisms that you do, whether it's food or alcohol or drugs or shopping or gambling, to try and cram that in to make you feel full, to make you feel connected to something, because you just never had that in your life. Right. And that's across the board with all people, that the poor coping skills. I always say it's a little bit like a scorpion with that sting. It's like you think it's okay to start with, but it comes around and stings you twice as hard. Yeah.
It's true, it does. Yeah. I mean, I've had my own issues with the eating issues, and I know you have as well, but it's so powerful when you realize where those things come from, and you recognize that eating behavior in particular, you recognize it as a coping mechanism, and it was there specifically to boost your dopamine. And then you also recognize, as you heal from that there are lots of other ways that are far better to get that validation and to build you up and to feel full.
Yeah, because instead of looking for that validation from somebody else to make you feel that I'm okay, you can do it for yourself, and realizing that you were always okay. It's just somewhere along the line the message got skewed.
Yeah. I've been watching a reality TV show, which is kind of like my recent guilty pleasure on super morbidly obese people and their journey through wellness
Yeah.
to gain control of their life. And on one hand, I get so angry because they don't talk to them about psychotherapy or anything from the beginning. They just throw them into this diet. And I just think, oh my God, you've got to teach them coping mechanisms. You can't just ask somebody that's addicted to food or sugar to just simply stop, because if it was that easy, they would have done it, right? But these
Yeah.
people have made themselves so grotesquely misshapen and miserable in every aspect of their life because the only thing in their life that gives them pleasure is the thing that's killing them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they are so completely out of control. And almost every time I watch one of these episodes, especially with the women, but it happens with the men too. They'll ask them, when did you start, really gaining weight? And it always is tied to, well, when I was 8, I was molested,
Yeah.
something like this. And then when I was 12, I got raped. And then when I was 15, I got pregnant. And it's always something sexual, seems like it triggers this. And it's fascinating to really, sit there as the therapist watching this. I'm going, yep, there it is. There's the thing. But then you start going, okay, so what does the food do for this person? And that's that old RFPI, right? So
Yeah.
it's prioritizing their needs because nobody loved them, or it's protecting them from some man wanting to touch them by making them huge, or maybe if they're just bigger, they can defend themselves. And this is that
That's it.
child's mechanism in the mind that drives the behavior, and I'm not lovable or whatever the thing is. So they love they love
Just that
themselves.
cover. Yeah, it protects them by creating a shield, because then
Yeah,
someone's not going to look at me, someone's not going to touch me, someone's not going to notice me. I don't have to stand out. I can,
yeah,
be in the background. It's a safety thing for them.
yeah,
Or like you said, I can be bigger, so because I was too small to do anything about something,
right,
and so if I'm bigger, then then that's going to somehow work for me.
right.
But the bigger creates problem.
I know. I
Yeah.
remember a story Marissa tells about a young woman who was being molested by her, I think it was her grandfather or something, and then she developed
Yeah.
eczema or psoriasis or something
Yeah,
in her
like a
genital.
dermatite. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so she had this like oozy, pussy sores in her groin, then maybe grandpa won't touch me anymore. And and so he stopped because she had this nasty sores on her private areas. And
Yeah.
it's so fascinating when you recognize that that child's mind made them have this subconsciously to protect them from molestation.
Yeah. Absolutely. As I said, it
He's,
does what it thinks it needs to protect you from pain, but in the long run, it gives you another pain because you needed it back then. You needed that
yeah,
situation back then to protect you, to prioritize you, to get you attention. If you got sick and that was the only time your parent paid any attention to you. So that was a way of you being seen. Because you felt invisible or alone or empty or vulnerable. But then 10, 15, 20 years more on, that is impacts on your life because
yeah,
you can't do the things you want to do.
right. And you still have that, injured little child inside of you that's clinging on to this problem. I mean, how many times, we're going through that session and I'm asking my client, so how's this problem working out for you? Yeah, not so good. And
Yeah.
it amazes me how many clients will have a really hard time letting go of the problem, even
Yeah.
though, you've demonstrated to them that they actually made this problem happen. They chose to have this problem. The problem, here is the purpose of it, and this is what it's doing for you. It's protecting you, it's prioritizing you, whatever, punishing. And so you get them to make those connections, but yet they still will cling to it. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I found it interesting too that, and that was also watching some other therapist sessions, that they may have more than one role. One,
Yeah.
you know, like there's the two, the conflicting, you know, there's the punisher and the protector.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it's this conflicting, so they're sort of stuck in the middle. So
Yeah.
you've got to look, you know, sometimes there's that discrepancy about what they're saying, and you go, well, you know, okay, so what's happening with that? And that was created then, but now this other one's gone, well, no, you know, you can't have a good life, you know, so you're not, because, you know, you're not perfect enough or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
That
so
was certainly
working
my experience with the weight stuff, because I've gone through 5 or 6 weight loss sessions. And for the longest time, I really thought that RTT wasn't helping. And each time it would pull up another thing. So, you know, one time I was punishing myself, one time I was prioritizing myself, one time I was protecting myself. And the truth is, I was doing all three. And that one, you know, that one behavior was doing all three things to me. And it took a number of sessions, because there were so many reasons for it, that it took a number of sessions for me to release it.
Yeah, and sometimes it can even just be one phrase or one word, you know, that comes up. It, you know, did a whole thing on trusting yourself, and the thing was, you know, like we go, oh yes, I know, you know, I'm not good enough. But then when we went down to it, and it was the one word, you'll never be good enough. Not just good enough, but never. So no matter what you did, you're never going to be. And that never was like the, you know, the claws hanging on. So, and realizing that's, oh, okay, wow, where'd that come from?
Right.
Yeah. So that's awesome to, you know, that you can do that. But it's been a real journey, and it's going to continue on. And yes, definitely.
So do you have any big plans with your practice?
Well, you know, at the moment, I want to get it so it's sustainable. I think that's like for most of us, we want to go, okay, because I'm working with my other job as well in the medical industry. So to be able to get to the point of saying, okay, I don't need that one, and this is the one that I'm just continuing on with, because this is the one that gives you, this is the passion. This is where it doesn't feel like work. You know, and you feel energized, you know, when you come out of it, as opposed to doing 10, 12 hours, you know, with traveling and everything, coming back and going, it takes me 2 days to recover from that. So, yeah, you know, that's when if it's your calling and that's what you've always wanted to do, it just keeps coming back at you until you do what you're meant to do.
Yeah.
So,
I know I've been toying a lot with doing developing women's retreats in the future. You know,
that would be
I could
awesome.
see taking, you know, 5, 6, 10 women to some tropical location or wherever, you know, have yoga and Reiki and massage and beautiful meals, and just this, you know, sisterhood connection with other women who are healing and going through this journey, in a beautiful place. Have this.
There's a big demand for that sort of thing. People are looking for that connection. And I think, again, too, we're in this world of social media, and I was before this generation of social media. So, but we seem to be instantly to be able to connect on every media platform, but yet we're not getting that connection.
But it would be like a great way to like disconnect from the internet, from your day-to-day life, and to just really plug into this group with, you know, high energy people with similar needs, and, you know, working on a particular problem, and everybody's just working together and coming together. Almost like when we went through our final training in Los Angeles, you know, we all had this common purpose together, this learning experience. And these women that were in our group, we've all bonded in such an intense way. You know, I mean, I see many of these women as my family. They're my sisters. And I think when you go through an intense emotional thing, it bonds you for life with people.
Yeah, and it's having that common thing that, you know, you're talking the same language, that deep connection and understanding, you know, which is what we're all looking for. We're looking for that sense of belonging and community and support. And the world's so fast. So now it's so fast. Everything's like, get it done, and you just don't have time to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
it
think that would be
allows,
awesome if you
I
could
think,
put that together.
that's kind of my long-term plan,
Mm,
maybe within the next 3 to 5 years, I would like to start offering those.
yeah. Oh, I'm sure it will happen. I'm
Yeah.
sure that you'll get there. You've got lots of support around you to, to say, yep, everyone wants to be in on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just got to get the heads together.
Could be brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I think they're great things for people to be involved in.
Well, it's been great catching up with you, and thanks for
Absolutely.
sharing about what's going on in your practice. And
Yes. And yours. I always keep an
yes,
eye and watching, from afar, from the other side of the world, this
of
15 and a
course.
half hour business.
Right. I know. It just seems, and with internet, we all feel like we can connect so instantly. I just feel like I'm sitting in my office having a chat with my good friend Debbie, and yet you're on the other side of the planet from me. It's
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
pretty
that's
cool.
the benefits of it. Yeah.
Right? All
Yeah.
right. Well, it's been great chatting. So
You
I'll
too.
catch up
You
with
have a
you
lovely
later.
day, and keep on doing the great work that you are.
You too.
Yeah. All right. We'll speak soon. Thanks, Tricia.